I
Let
just
me just
stopped.
read. Let me just read you this poem that I'd written about the Nuggets in the Lakers game three, right
Okay.
quick. All right, all right. Conference playoffs. Braun took the page off. Joker made him play for the way that they played off. Reeves was a white boy, third option hooper, aiming for the net. He a straight-eyed shooter. Ruby looking gooey when he hit him with the mid. 80 compared to Jokic looks like a fragile kid. Or a sorry squid. Not sure what it is, but Joker got AD from a Mr. to a miss. 80 is a
Oh,
mix.
bars.
Braun going down. Lakers losing in six. D'Lo ain't him. Lord, please forgive Lakers fans on the bridge that done put their house mortgage on the Lakers winning chips. It ain't gonna happen. Jamal Murray loves clapping, hitting step back shots, giving blondies back shots. When the Nuggets set a pick, he telling brothers back off. He ain't missing shots a lot. If he's off, then Joker pops. Bruce Brown, MPJ, KCP, dipping dots, dunk contest, goat, Aaron Gordon, even he putting in work like he Michael Jordan. When the Nuggets be sniping and the threes getting hot, then the Lakers better go and get a broom and a mop. Thank you.
Welcome back, NBA World, to another episode of Spittin Hoops, our weekly NBA podcast. We're back on that wave. Weekly NBA podcast, talking about just about anything in the NBA. And right now, there's only one series going on because the Lakers couldn't hold up their end of the bargain, and it's the Celtics and the Heat. Last podcast, we spent the whole podcast talking about Jimmy Butler, and he proceeded to lose two of the next two games. So here we are back, and we kind of have to talk about how the Celtics might win this series. Anthony, the resident Celtics fan, I'll give you the floor.
Hey, Max, how's it going, man?
I'm good, man. How are you? How's your emotions, man?
I actually don't know if we should talk about the Celtics potentially winning because every single time we talk about something happening, the other thing happens.
Literally, it's
uh,
insane.
it's pretty impressive, honestly, at this point. But that being said, it's pretty crazy. I think we said that even if the Celtics lose in six, we're not impressed by it. So I guess we still have to see if that happens or not.
Yeah.
However, now two straight games, we're in 3-2 mode. Only, what was it, 11 teams before this had pushed it to a six-game series. Most recently, I think the Raptors did it in the first round last year, even though they lost in six, but that was against a vastly superior team. And then the famous one being the Sonics to the Bulls, but also a subpar team. So it's been fun for sure. Feels like the Celtics are playing free, backs against the wall a little bit. So there's nothing else to do but have fun out there. But it's felt like we're in elimination mode every single game right now, so we don't really have anything to lose, even if we push it to seven. My brain right now is fried when it comes to talking about the Celtics, just all over the place. How are you doing, more objective fan, Max?
Uh, it's been good. I mean, I haven't had to watch the Warriors break my heart for a few weeks, so actually life has been really good. A lot of, mental fortitude has come from that. To be honest, like watching these games has been pretty exciting, specifically the last two, because they've been kind of blowouts, but it's like the Heat, right? And since they won the first three games, like the Heat will be down 15 with 4 minutes left, and I'm still watching.
Yeah.
Like last night, they brought the game back to like 10 points with like a minute and a half, and you're like, oh, there's something about to happen.
Yep.
And Sam Hauser hits a three, and it's like whatever, right?
Oh,
Yeah, you're like, oh, thank God, right?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You're like, they got it. Because you see Marcus Smart's like standing up on the bench and he's like, dude, do I have to come back in? Like, this sucks. But obviously, so Miami loses game five, or game four, sorry, 116 and 199. That game, it kind of felt like, okay, Boston's going to split the away games, and it felt like they just happened to lose game three and won game four. I didn't really take too much from that. But last night I thought was very interesting and potentially more indicative of the rest of the series. So Boston wins by 13. And obviously there's no Gabe Vincent. And Boston starters just outplay Miami starters from top to bottom completely, right? Very impressive performance from Boston, and makes me think that they can do it. Obviously we came on the show a few days ago and we were like, obviously if they get eliminated in 6, it's still a failure. But they do look better, and it's now to the point where I think they could do it. Do I think they will? Probably not. In terms of a comeback, but it's on the cards now when it was not at all a few days ago.
Just need two. Just need 2 in a row.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's first to 4. It's first to 4. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's just first to 4.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that had frustrated me was going over what we talked about, what my predictions about how the Heat can win and how the Celtics can win. This was under the assumption that the series was definitely over and the Heat were going to win one of these 2 games. So Jimmy goes nuclear at least 4 out of 7 games. I think he's hit nuclear maybe twice or 3 times. So there's definitely one of those games coming, which we can beat, but we have to be able to withstand that. And then that steady diet of Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, Kevin Love, Robinson, Kyle Lowry, Max Strus. That's been a little bit less. And then you referenced the Gabe Vincent injury, which has been huge because he's been playing absolutely incredible. I think 50% from 3 in the first 4 games. So that's definitely a pretty big loss for them. And we'll take what we can get for sure. I think you'd mentioned off podcast too, Tyler Hero, one of their best players, not being there has been helpful for sure.
Who was warming up before last night's game. So it does look like he's on the way back. Will we see him in this series? Probably not, but that could be a big addition for them down the line.
That would be a wildly big addition, especially it's kind of tough to do that in the middle of a series with all the adjustments that that he would have to make. But I think if he's ready for the finals, that would be sublime for them. But 2 more games. Today's just going to be a bit of a patient sweat, calm before the storm, and then tomorrow, we'll get after it. Celtics are 13-7 on the road in the last 2 seasons in the playoffs, so we do play relatively comfortably at home. We are finally back to 500 at home in the last 2 seasons, 11-11, baby. So just need 2, man. It's not much more than that. The effort is there. The hustle is there. The defense. I'm curious what your take on this, because it feels like obviously when the Celtics shoot more than 40%, there's that stat where they're like 38-2. And when they're under 40%, they're like 29-31. I think a lot of this comes from their defense really getting them feeling comfortable, because now they can just let it fly without worrying about having to hit every single shot to counterbalance what the Heat are going to do. They can just kind of out physical them.
Yeah, and we mentioned this a little bit before, right? Like it's the Celtics defense is a coaching thing, because although they don't have a premier like perimeter defender, and I guess they do have Rob Williams, and like obviously Marcus Smart's a great perimeter defender. You could definitely say he's a premier perimeter defender. I feel like we kind of disrespected him on the last podcast by not mentioning him in that conversation. But there's a difference between like a Marcus Smart and like a prime Kawhi or prime Paul George defensively, where they can be 6'8", and a lot more defensive havoc is coming from those types of players, right? And I thought the defense last night was amazing. Specifically, Rob Williams isn't starting anymore, and Rob Williams is playing like 20 minutes a game now. And that's usually the guy I felt like has been the biggest part of their defense over the last few years. But specifically in this series, it's looked like Al Horford is way more switchable, way better defensively almost as a whole than Rob Williams, which I think is pretty fascinating. Which makes, Derek White starting in front of Rob Williams totally okay. I do think there is some interesting stuff happening with Miami in terms of their bench offensively. Haywood Highsmith, Caleb Martin, and Duncan Robinson all came off the bench and all had great games last night. And if I'm Miami, like I think our bench can outscore their bench, and then we just need one of these 2 games, the starters, to just hold their own against the Celtics starters, right? So I think there are good things happening on both sides. But if I'm Boston specifically, right, like Rob Williams played 20 minutes last night, was plus 10. I almost feel like maybe he's earned more leeway to more minutes. And that's really good for them, right? Because if you can play Rob Williams also off the bench like 25 to 30 minutes a game, you're really limiting some of the other scrubs on the Boston's bench who have to come in the game, right? So I thought that's been like a really great sign is the Celtics defense. I also wonder if there's just a little bit of a talent gap offensively. Now, especially with the Gabe Vincent and Tyler Hero injury, I just wonder if Miami has the firepower to put up 120 like they did earlier in the series, like in game 3, where they put up 130. Like, I don't know if Miami's ever going to drop 130 again in these playoffs, you know? So that's a little bit interesting. But Boston's got to capitalize. I mean, they've got a shot here.
Yeah, they have a shot. And to your point, it's tough for Miami to naturally get to there when they're able to play very freely, like we've been seeing in the first, especially games 2 and 3, when they were just playing so free, um, passing the ball consistently. The Celtics, it's also on the Celtics too. Like the Celtics weren't really hanging their hat on defense, and they're finally kind of getting down to it on defense. One thing that you were saying that raised my mind was thinking about Jason Tatum is I think Jalen Rose said this, or Channing Frye might have said this. He does all this like dribbling and sometimes to no avail. And so
Oh,
when
so
he's
much.
and it's impressive, but when he actually like turns a dribble into a move and does something with it and rises up and shoots it or just drives to the hole, like when he dunked all over Caleb Martin in the first quarter, that was beautiful. That was what we needed to see from the Celtics early on, setting the tone, setting the pressure. I think to your point as well, as long as we can play great defense, that's gonna be something that really slows down Miami. Like we by default we need to play good defense, and we don't need to have an amazing offensive night. We just need to be able to play really really good defense, and the threes will fall. I think the better our defense has been, it's shown even with last year when our defense is rolling. When we are able to get out in transition and not kind of walk the ball up the court after another made shot on the opposing side, we're able to kind of spread the floor quicker. The defense hasn't set. We have more open shots. We have more chances to drive to the lane. And then people can see the ball go through the net and they feel more comfortable and confident. So I agree with you in terms of the talent gap, especially because we do have four guys who scored over 20 points last night, and neither of the two leading scorers were Tatum or Brown, even though they both had solid games in and of themselves. But that really goes to show what this team can do.
Yeah, honestly, I thought that it was not a great Tatum game, just visually. Like in the third quarter, it's like getting a little bit closer. And he does like this dribble package move, like size up at the top of the key, and then just chucks it with a right hand into a Miami like defender, right? Like and like doing stuff like that. And it's just like you're saying, like if he puts together those moves and goes to the hole, it looks great. But sometimes he just pounds the rock into the ground and then turns it over. It reminds me of Jordan Poole. Like, sorry, another Warriors reference, but it's like a little bit like it looks great, but it's like when you put it together, it looks amazing, but when you don't, it
Yeah.
looks terrible. So it's like, kind of that in the middle ground. I also love Tatum, right? I think Tatum is like better than KD, obviously. I've said this many times. I'm a Tatum believer, sorry, and I think he'll be fine. And if anything, if you win one of those like kind of mid Tatum games, that's a good sign.
That's a
Um,
great.
yeah, that's a great sign. Something I did, and you watched the game, obviously. I want to get your take on this. I think there's something weird happening with Bam, and the Celtics defense on him, where they're kind of very willing to give Bam offensive actions, whether that's post ups or him even just catching the ball at the free throw line. They're much more okay with that than they were at the beginning of the series. Because when Bam's doing that and he's kind of attracting more attention, a lot of other people can score off him. But I thought last night they kind of were like, Bam, if you want to cook, let's see it. Let's see you drop 40. And it's Bam. He's not going to be dropping 45 or something. So there's that. But I really thought that opened up a lot of the game for them. And it kind of just changed the pacing of the game. You just got to try stuff out, right? By the time you get to game 5, game 6. And I thought that really worked. And against like the Cavs, for example, like or like not the Cavs, I guess a better example is like the Knicks. Bam can really just crash the boards. They don't have like the Knicks didn't have perimeter defenders to really hardcore limit the Miami's perimeter scoring, right? But for Miami to get to a 120 point game in this series, Bam needs to have 30, you know? And so Bam's role in that Knicks series is really to facilitate, to crash the boards, to play defense. But in this series, he's going to have to score a little more, which plays perfectly into the Celtics' hands, who do have really good big man defenders. And they can just one-on-one Bam in the post when New York, if Bam's going to work on Julius Randle, now the rest of the defense has to react a little bit more because that's what they were doing. They weren't putting Mitch on Bam that much. They were kind of using Mitch as a free safety, but all those matchups I think are very interesting. And I think it really plays into Boston's hands, especially with Gabe Vincent being hurt.
Totally. I noticed that a lot too. There was a moment in the game. Do you remember when Bam didn't have anywhere to go with it? And so he finally took the shot and heaved it and went high off the glass and in,
Yeah.
which to his credit, great shot. I think that was definitely an on purpose shot. Like I think he took it with that
Yeah.
angle because he knew that was going in. That just went to show how difficult it was for him to score. And
Mhm.
I agree with you, telling him, okay, fine, you do it. We'd rather have you score 25 than have all these guys score 15. Let's
Yeah.
have them all each score 10 points because they can't get the ball. And obviously, three is more than two. So, like you're saying, when we have to have two come to double team Bam, then it leaves everybody else open. Then the Heat get rolling. He felt a little bit uncomfortable in that position, I thought, too.
Mhm.
Like weirdly,
Yeah.
like a little bit of shuffling his feet. We
Absolutely.
have a couple of turnovers called on him, like when he was in the post. I don't remember, but he just didn't look like he was comfortable, even though he is typically pretty comfortable in that like face up or like back down like 8 to 10 foot range. He can be pretty lethal from there. So when he gets going, it's pretty terrifying to see. But also he can completely turn that faucet off. And then I'm like, all right, Bam, shoot it. Like it's just gonna miss and roll off the rim. So definitely if Bam has a 35-point game because he's just the master of like the short mid range and can cook us, then hats off to you, Bam Adebayo,
Yeah.
for knocking the Celtics out.
And also, like, since he's shooting twos, like last night, for example, I think he shot over 50%, I think, from the floor. But if you're shooting twos in a playoff game, you need to be like making 60% of your twos,
Right.
65% of your twos, right? Like at some, like you're saying, three's more than two, right? So the efficiency on your twos has to be so high. And specifically just rhythm wise, also, if a guy takes, 17 twos, or if he makes 17 twos but took 30 of them, even if that's pretty efficient, you're gonna take it because that's kind of ruining the rhythm of the offense for everyone else. I think you
Yeah,
specifically saw this with like Kevin Love and like other guys like that who kind of didn't play very much last night. Like Max Strus didn't play very much last night just because the rhythm was off with that whole starting group. Um, Obviously Bam's still good, right? Bam still had a good game. I
yeah,
know he was minus 15 on plus minus, but it was still like a good game. But you
yeah,
need great Bam games, especially if Boston's defending like this.
totally. And like you said, a great Bam game also involves him distributing the ball and getting the rest of the offense involved.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for even if he's making these shots, if it's very slow defense, like if it's a slow half court possession where they're running down most of the clock, dribble, post up eventually, then he puts in a shot. It really does take a lot of these other guys out of their rhythm because they are still role players and they do still need to have a chance to see the ball and let it fly and let it rip. And obviously all these guys are professionals. Kevin Love is professional and champion. Kyle Lowry is a professional and champion. Max Drews, Gabe Vincent, even though he didn't play, Caleb Martin, they're all professionals. That being said, they are still role players, and it's helpful for them to get involved in the offense. So standing around watching a
Yeah.
long session that results in a two eventually is definitely different than like zip, pass around, even pass it around to Bam in the paint, who's able to draw a couple, look around, pass it back out. Duncan
Yeah.
Robinson, three swish. I'll take a Bam rolling around the rim and dropping in, even more so than this like team offense that can be absolutely terrifying to watch.
Yeah, it's like if Bam's gonna take 23 seconds to make a two, even if he makes it, honestly, you're kind of okay with it. Like at some point you feel like you're gonna get the better end of those. Also, Bam, like 3 assists last night. It is like it's just a little bit funny to me. I remember him like a few years back, average like 5 or 6 assists a game for a whole regular season. And he's still like a great big man distributor, in my opinion. But he's not like I thought at that point in time he was going to have a chance to become like a Sabonis level
Mm-hmm.
distributor as a big man. And he didn't
Yep.
really take that step, which is fine. But then in a playoff series like this, if he's not distributing the ball major in one-on-one matchups, like, and he's not scoring major in one-on-one matchups, it's gonna be a little interesting for the flow of their offense. I think that is one of the bigger flaws with Bam. Like, I don't want to be the guy who roasts someone for having no bag, but like Bam doesn't really have like the greatest bag.
No.
Uh, Not that I think that's a big deal, but just in terms of that metric, and I think that's really going to hurt them. Also, like not a great Jimmy Butler game, but it kind of felt like Jimmy did what he needed to do for the first few games. You're kind of hoping he can coast for one of these and potentially steal a win, and you couldn't.
Yeah.
So now you're back to hoping for another big Jimmy Butler game, but. you know.
Well, right. And another thing to your point is looking at all the box scores, nobody really shot the ball poorly for the Heat. I mean, they shot over 50%. Even Jimmy Butler shot 5 of 10. He didn't have too many turn. He had two turnovers. Duncan Robinson was 7 of 10. Friggin'
But Bam had
Highsmith
six
got
turnovers. Bam had six
Bam did.
turnovers, for example.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that was the key difference, right? I think the turnover differential of 16 to 9. Did you get the points off of turnovers? Because I think that was a pretty big margin as well.
Didn't catch it, but even just six turnovers, I mean, we can assume just pacing of your offense is like basically chalked by that point, you know?
Totally.
But I agree with your point, though. I did think it was interesting. Again, as much as it's kind of looked bad over the last few games with Miami, they still clearly have 8 guys they can play in the series, despite all the injuries,
Yeah.
etc. Like, and that's always like, you know, you kind of just need bodies by the end of the playoffs, right? It's kind of becomes a war of attrition like that, and you're hoping your stars can pull you over the edge with all the role players. And Miami kind of still has that formula going. I mean, you know, Haywood Highsmith played 36 minutes and he played great. Like, you know, that's their 8th guy. Bet if I'm Miami, I'm not tweaking yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you love to see that guy that gets hot at the end of a game where you're not winning, and then they're seeing the ball go through the net, and they're like, okay, cool. We have another guy now who can step up in this elimination game.
Well, he played 36 minutes too. It wasn't just at the end of the game. I mean, he was out there for like majority of the game. Was he scoring like all game? Like obviously not, but like you know, even at the end of the game he was scoring, and he played. He's able to take up minutes. You just need like I need you to play 5 minutes on Tatum right now, and hopefully like you could do something. And also Haywood Highsmith was really good in the regular season. I was actually kind of surprised we didn't see more of him
Yeah.
specifically throughout the playoffs. Obviously Miami has so many role players, it's tough to like allocate minutes, but I think he's really good. And if he's your 8th man at this point in the playoffs, like I like him better than Jeff Green probably. And you know, that's Denver's 8th man. He might even be the Denver 7th man, you know. So that's kind of why with this.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like some team that just knows how to spawn new players time and time again. Somebody goes down, this other guy comes up. Another guy comes down. All of a sudden, oh, look, Tyler Hero's warming up again. Oh, he might be okay. So I mean, that's the Heat's mentality. That's what makes them so special, and that's what makes them so dangerous, is that they have guys who just are able to become inspired and are able to rise to the occasion thanks to that leadership of Jimmy Butler. So, man, this game's going to be crazy tomorrow.
I love this series. This is an amazing series, and like all the adjustments. As much as we were roasting Missoula for his coaching, I thought the last 2 games he's been fantastic. To be honest, I really think his coaching has been incredible. All the timeouts. Yeah, he hits the timeout finally.
Finally. Like anytime they even pushed to like 15 when our lead was 20. He was like,
timeout.
Nope, timeout. We're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Yeah. And considering he doesn't like using the timeouts at the end of the games, you might as well just use them early to break runs. Because I know you're probably not going to use it with 10 seconds left. Or just like, you know, if that's the way you do it, like it's fine. Like again, the Warriors, but the Warriors don't call timeouts at the end of games all the time either. Like I understand that sentiment, but then he's reacting well by like overusing his timeouts early, which I think really helped them get like early leads in both games. Really, last kind of point. This is super basketball niche, but like Nikola Jovic on the Heat bench. He played like 3-4 minutes, and they were like +8 in those minutes. I'd kind of like to see a little bit more minutes out of him. Like, I think he's like fun, lanky, can shoot a bit, can run around. He probably won't play next game, but like that's just a side note. Like, I kind of like what they have there. Again, another guy who could hypothetically play minutes for Miami. But yeah.
Well, to your point on that, that was the reason why, even when they were down 17 with 4 minutes to go, we're still watching the game closely, because they did pull it to relatively close.
They pulled it to 10. I mean, it was like 10, and then it was a horrible Celtics possession that led to a 3 that went in, right? But like you're a little bit like, oh, and then like the 3 goes in, and it's like, okay, like that wasn't a close game, but like with a minute 20, I was like, is this gonna happen? Because also like it would have been the most poetic way for Boston to get knocked out this year. Like no flame. Like no flame,
Yeah,
but like
yeah. Uh,
okay, well with that, also Malcolm Brogdon's just out of the rotation completely. Kind of blows my mind.
well, he's
Like
injured,
it's
right?
oh, was he hurt last night? Did he get hurt?
Yeah, yeah. I think he was. I think he might be doubtful still.
Okay.
He had a injured forearm, so he
Because
left the game.
okay, because he played like 8 minutes last night, and I was like, then I feel like I didn't see him like the rest of the game. So I thought that was interesting. But to be honest, it's not like Malcolm Brogdon's been amazing. Like I
No,
wouldn't if that was adjustment that they held up, like it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, in the postseason, he's been it's like 10 a
he's
game
been
on
yeah.
like
And
mid shooting. It's like at some point, would you rather just give the 20 minutes that he has and split it by three with Tatum Brown and Derek White, you know?
right. Well, that's the thing, real quick. From the Athletic, reporting that Brogdon has been dealing with a quote partial tear in the tendon coming out of his right elbow that leads to his forearm. So
Oh, so
maybe
homie
that,
cannot shoot. Homie cannot shoot then.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
how are you gonna have
And
a torn tendon in your shooting arm and still play? I
and
respect it. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those spots where we are in an elimination game, and he's not really probably going to help us very much because the
yeah,
things that he's great at, like if he's a great defender, but we need him to be able to shoot. So maybe we let him chill for a bit, see if he can get a little healthy and kind of keep balling with the rotation that we have because it's working right now.
yeah. I agree. Looking forward to game six. I just have like a one prediction. I think Miami's gonna force Tatum to. They're kind of gonna be like, yo, Tatum, like go score 45 against us. And I think that's kind of my hunch. Obviously, Miami plays like their zone defense and they kind of roll with the punches with whatever happens. They're not like super like we're gonna focus on one person or not all the time. But Tatum, as much as he had double digit assists last night, he also had, I think, like 5 turnovers. And if I'm Miami, I'm kind of thinking maybe that's something we can attack, especially when he goes 1 for 6 from three. If he's having another cold shooting night, it's like, okay, Tatum, let's see if you can get to the rack every time. Like, I wonder if that's what happens. And on the Boston end, I think they're just going to try to run back the same game plan. I didn't really think that Miami was particularly like breaking down the game plan very much out of the Celtics. Like the Celtics starters killed Miami starters, to be honest.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just maintain Jimmy Butler. That was the big adjustment that I like to see out of them is that they send help if he started to cook and they're like, nope, 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 we're not going to let you cook. We'll let other people beat us. We're not going to let you beat us.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. With that, do you have any predictions? I think Miami wins the next game probably, and if they don't, I actually think Boston wins in seven.
Oh man, let's be split on this. I will say that we win game six. I'll say we
That's
win.
fair.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I kind of feel like it would be on brand again for the Celtics to look great for 2 straight games and lose by 30 in game six. Like, you know,
Right.
no,
Ugh.
no, no flame. But like, just in
Yeah.
terms of like mental fortitude of this team has not been always great. But yeah,
But well, yeah, I mean that's the key is they have to be like, no, we didn't complete a comeback. We haven't done anything. We're down
yeah,
3-2. This is an elimination game still.
yeah. And as much as I was roasting that rhetoric of them saying, "Don't let us get another one," they're still saying it. You know, I respect that, but I kind of maybe I misread it. There, I think another one is like, "Don't let us get one," and then we'll keep like, "Don't let us keep winning these games." When they first said it, I thought it was like, "Don't let us get one, or else we're gonna win this series." It's like, okay, man, but they said it after last night's game too. I guess I can't really disrespect the consistency, you know.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's enough Boston talk. I feel like for the last 4 podcasts we've talked about Boston because there was like the Philly series and then there was Philly
Yeah.
game 7 and then there was this series and yeah. So hopefully Boston gets knocked down. We don't have to talk about them until like middle of the off season because yeah. Uh I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Moving on. There was one thing I really wanted to talk about, and it's something I think we forgot to talk about in the last podcast, and it's kind of like a trend in this offseason. And it's Monty Williams got fired by the Phoenix Suns. So let me get on my little high horse here.
Spit, spit
I
Max.
I literally cannot understand this move at all. Unless someone behind the scenes knows better than I do, which There probably is. It didn't really seem like this team had a bunch of dysfunction in the locker room. It didn't really feel like this team was dysfunctional from the inside, but rather just needed time. Frankly, this team was put together at the trade deadline with guys like Terrence Ross coming off buyouts, Kevin Durant coming in, and you're hoping TJ Warren can give you 5 minutes in a playoff game, right? This team, I don't think was built, the Suns specifically, wasn't built to go far in the playoffs. They didn't have the depth. They didn't also have the star talent. KD didn't play up to a KD level for much of the playoffs. And then him and Book really needed to be like all-time type stuff for them to keep progressing with the lack of bench that they had. By firing Monty Williams, I think you're kind of saying we should have gone further, which I disagree with. I didn't expect them to go further. We talked about it at the beginning of the playoffs. Both of us, we didn't expect them to make the finals or anything like that. And I think it shows a little bit of a disconnect on the basketball end. Did you really think you were going to throw a team together 6 months before the finals and then win it? I don't really understand that, especially when your whole bench is filled with guys like Jock Landale, who weren't in the NBA a year ago, basically. I mean, I think Landale was on the team last year, but that sort of thing. And we saw this also in Milwaukee. Coach Bud got fired. I thought that was the right decision, to be honest, but I think there's a difference between that firing, where Coach Bud got first rounded by a Miami Heat team that was severely less talented than his team. Monty Williams got second rounded by a Denver Nuggets team that's probably going to win the chip.
Right.
And I'm pretty frustrated by this, especially because I feel like the Suns, over the time Monty Williams has been there, have completely overperformed. The only really real coaching misuse that I've seen was just McCall Bridges. They definitely could have given McCall Bridges a lot bigger role in the offense before he left. And obviously hindsight's 2020 there. But that's kind of the only coaching miscue I've seen. I mean, DeAndre Ayton's like not that good at basketball. Like Chris Paul is old, and Chris Paul ran the least average miles an hour out of any starting player in the NBA this season, and you have to cover for that. You have to cover for that with guys like D-Book, who has to score 35 on one end, and he's never been known as a good defender, let alone a premier defender. And now he's got to guard the best player on the other team too. Phoenix was a really flawed team all year, and for Monty Williams to get fired, I hope he gets a fat severance package, and I hope he gets a great contract wherever he goes next. I thought he's been great since coming back as a coach. Obviously, he was the coach of the Hornets way back when. Now he's the coach of the Suns, or he was the coach of the Suns. But I thought he was night and day between those two stops. And on the Suns, he was a great coach, as much as I don't like the Suns.
That was
I just can't believe it. I'm very shocked. It's surprising.
Man, I mean, I think you said it really, really well. I don't think there's much for me to add. You hit it on the head with, I don't think they didn't blow a lead. They didn't lose to an inferior team. They didn't really have any issues in the locker room. Obviously, Ayton was a bit of an issue, but what are we supposed to do? I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020. In the finals a couple of years ago, they could have made some adjustments to help kind of slow down Giannis, not play one-on-one. But at the same time, there's like highlight reels of Ayton just not being aggressive in these playoffs. So I don't know. Maybe it's Matt Ishbia trying to go in a different direction. He's getting KD trying to make like a splash or whatever. But I think Monty Williams is a fantastic coach. I was really disappointed, and I'm interested to see where they go next with him.
Well, first of all, I think the DeAndre Ayton thing wasn't even like, it wasn't Monty Williams' fault. It was the ownership didn't want to give him max, and DeAndre Ayton wanted a max. And then DeAndre Ayton finally hits restricted free agency. The Pacers sign him to a max offer sheet. So now DeAndre Ayton's like, okay, I'm in Indiana. Like Phoenix didn't want to give me the max. Here, I got my max amount. And Phoenix like, no, actually, we're gonna match it now.
Yeah,
it's like, if I was DeAndre Ayton, I'd be checked too. Like I would just be pissed, like completely. Because also by doing that, Phoenix got to cut, like didn't have to pay him the full max that Phoenix could offer him. They only had to match the max that Indiana could offer him. So also he's like, now I have to stick around, and I had to take less money than if you guys had actually just given me the max last year. I would be checked if I was Ayton, and I would be checked if I was Monty Williams. I was like, dude, DeAndre Ayton was the third or fourth best player on our championship team. You don't want to give him the money, and he's young. And I think that kind of ruined the relationship. And classic Sarver actions out of like the previous ownership group. But I do think the firing of Monty Williams is definitely a Matt Ishbia orchestrated thing. To be honest, I mean, he rushed the purchase of his team and they rushed the votes so that they could make the KD splash. Like he's clearly very invested in this team, which is awesome to watch as like a fan, especially after the Suns had a terrible owner before. But I'd be shocked if he didn't approve this firing, at
Yeah,
least.
I'm curious what is in the background of really why this didn't go down. But it didn't. I don't know. I think it's just that trade. I'm curious to see what happens next for Monty Williams. I was reading that he's probably going to take the next year off. I know the
Yeah.
Pistons offered him like a bag to come through and coach, which would be kind of cool. I mean,
Oh, that would be great. That would be
that'd be
especially
great.
with the young guards that they have, and we just
Exactly.
saw him do great with guards too.
With
Yeah,
with with a team that didn't make the playoffs before, so that could be
yeah.
kind of cool. So, but I mean, he's earned it. He's a great coach. We have so many great coaches being fired. It's pretty wild.
And on that end, the Suns are now looking at the final four are basically the Suns assistant coach, another assistant coach elsewhere I'm blanking out on, but then Nick Nurse, who's in the final four for every coaching job because he's the best coach on the market. He's definitely gonna get like 30 million a year. He's gonna have like four offers and just like go to each ownership group and go like, what can you pay me?
Yeah.
But the fourth person in the Suns job discussion is Doc Rivers. If Doc Rivers is the coach of the Suns next year, I can't understand firing Monty Williams. Like that would be like an inexcusable downgrade in my opinion. Especially because we've never seen a Doc Rivers team overperform ever. Like
No, I don't think so.
since
No.
maybe like that Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell Clippers team, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've never like we haven't and they overperformed into an eighth seed.
Right.
That won two first round games against the Warriors, like respect,
Yeah.
but like, you know, that's the sort of overperformance we see from Doc Rivers teams. Monty Williams teams overperform. They beat LeBron James in the first round and they make an NBA finals go up 2-0. You know, as much as they lost that series, I thought that was also an overperformance from the Suns at the time. So, you know, that's where I'm at. I can't believe he got fired.
Ugh, Monty.
Come on. And also, I think Chris Paul's probably gone. Him and Monty are boys. I think that makes me think Chris Paul's gone.
They got to blow it
Um,
up. They need depth.
yeah, and it's also like you don't even have to blow it up that much. Just like
Yeah.
take Chris Paul. If you can make like create two mid role players out of Chris Paul and two mid role players out of DeAndre, and probably fine, you know.
For
Um,
depth.
and they also have Shamit under contract, guys like that, so they'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah. It
I
was
don't.
not a lack of coaching adjustments that Monty Williams made that led to this situation. That was not the reason why they lost. They lost because they lost to a better team with the best player in the NBA.
And Katie played 11 regular season games with this team. Like, how are they supposed to like be cohesive? You know, like I can't believe it, man. Anyways, moving on. We saw the John Morant Instagram post. Just want to briefly cover that. It came out that like they did a wellness check. He's just taking time off social media. Job probably a good decision. Especially after the stuff that he's been through. We're still waiting on potential news of a suspension and whatnot. We'll obviously cover that should that come. But you know, just hoping for the best for Ja, obviously. One of the most exciting players, one of my favorite players to watch when he's on in the NBA. So just want to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hope he's okay. Saw the Instagram post of him, like, I guess deleting his account or something, or like
Well,
taking a break from
he
it.
basically like posted with like his dad, his like I think his dad, his
And
sister, his mom, and he's saying like goodbye. And that was the last
yeah,
post was like him and his daughter or something. It was like goodbye.
like that's a bit like crying
I'm
for
gonna
help.
be yeah,
Yeah.
they did a great job doing a wellness check. After a post like that from a guy who's gone through all that, who's in the
Yeah.
media spotlight, like if it was someone that I knew from school who's posting something like that, I would probably send them a message too, you know?
Immediately. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yo, you good? You good? Like, what do you mean
Yeah,
by
that is. Yeah.
like, like,
So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, I won't even pretend that I know too much about it, but I just know that when it comes to mental health, it's always imperative to make sure that he's all right first and foremost, because with if he's not feeling good, then there's nowhere really for them to go. They really have to reset. It's perfect now that this the off season. Give them
Yeah.
some time, figure out with the organization what they want to do, meet with a team psychologist, meet with somebody that he can really resonate with, and kind of work through all these things. It's tough, whatever the reason is. I don't think we actually know truly what it is. We can speculate. Maybe it's the fame. Maybe it's he's having an identity crisis. He's like, wait, I wasn't expecting to be this big of a star when I'm 23 years old. Maybe he's like, damn, I can't do anything that I want without getting like caught up. Like, this is ridiculous. And he has people talking about him 24/7 on all these like major news outlets. But regardless of speculation, maybe he's struggling with something that we don't know about. And like you said, ultimately it's great that he had a wellness check for him just to make sure that he's okay. And I just, wish him the best, because, he's a great talent to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, basketball aside, like, yeah, just for his own good. That's great. And then obviously basketball not aside, in my opinion, when he's on is like a top 7 player in the league. I had him ranked as that earlier in the year. Obviously that ranking would be pretty different now, but much respect to him. Last thing I wanted to cover, right? Obviously, I'm based out of DC. As much as I joke about having second teams and whatnot, the Wizards are truly my second team. Like I love the Wizards, and there's something about being in so much pain as like a Wizards fan to then go enjoy being a Warriors fan. That's kind of fun. Also, former Wizards season ticket holder, which I feel like gives me credibility to say I'm a fan of them. They actually basically grabbed the Clippers GM and made him their president of kind of the parent company that owns the Wizards, the Capital City Go-Go, the G League team, and the Washington Mystics. So to be honest, he'll probably serve in the capacity mostly as the GM as well of the basketball team, although he's overseeing the whole operation. But his name is Michael Winger, and Michael Winger was hired by the Clippers in 2017 in the summer, and if you remember, that was the team with like Blake Griffin, Chris Paul just left. Steve Ballmer had just bought the team. You had guys like Pat Bev. I think you had guys like Avery Bradley still left over on that team from the old Clippers teams. But he comes in, they trade Blake Griffin 30 games in the season. That was the whole ordeal with Blake Griffin being pissed at the Clippers. But he was the GM who did that move. And 2 years later, a great move, because a year later they make the playoffs. 2 years later, they get Kawhi and Paul George. And as much as that hasn't fully worked out, I would argue as a GM, he's done very, very well. I disagree with some of the moves, like, just you get Reggie Jackson and you get Bones Highland, and it's like all the same variation of the same player, right? I can't totally agree with that, but like those moves, I don't know where that came from. Like, I don't know if that was him particularly, but he got Kawhi and Paul George onto his basketball team, so that's kind of exciting as a Wizards fan. And he also clearly isn't like a stranger to building a team, obviously like the Clippers, but he was also at OKC before this, overseeing a lot of stuff with like the KD, Russell Westbrook, James Harden Clippers. So I think that's super exciting. I've also never seen a GM get just like stolen off like a premier basketball team like this. Like that was why we talked before the podcast. That's why I was really stunned by this. I was like, this guy was down to leave the Clippers, and Ballmer, like, he must have got a bag, basically.
Oh, dude, like, must have. And the big thing that you talked about there is the aggressiveness to go out and steal him. I don't think we know the details, but the Wizards saw this guy and they said, okay, here's a West Coast team that has the same colors as we do in our franchise. That's the only contact I think between the two of them. Also haven't made to past a conference finals in a long, long time.
Yeah.
The Wizards are mired in mediocrity, man. That's kind of what their whole thing is. So I love the idea of being aggressive and just going for it. So this is not a team that, what are they doing fighting for 35 wins every single year? What are they doing fighting for 43? Ooh, we went 44 and 38 this year. Look at us. We made the play-in game. It's as a Wizards fan as you are, I'm sure this is a very, very great day for you, because whether they blow it up and just reset, or whether they try to build on something, I don't know what they're going to try to build on. It's huge that they made this trade. The final thing, or this move, the final thing I'll say is it'll have to be through a trade, because typically Washington is not known as a place where free agent stars come to play. So That this is why they need a great GM. Yeah.
Draft too, but their drafting record's been terrible, to be honest. And also, if you pick 8th through 12th every year for 8 years,
Yep.
that's really lowering your chance of getting a star player rather than picking top 5 even one year, like.
Yeah.
But I do think the fact that he's cutthroat and within 2 months of taking over his last job, he traded Blake Griffin, who had a max contract, right? So, I hope this means Porzingis is not on the Washington Wizards next year. That's long story short. Yeah, because if he gets a 4-year max from the Wizards or something, then we're just going through the same thing. And I do think I am a little nervous because I think ownership is really caught up in that job. By the end, so Tommy Shepard was the old GM of the Wizards. It really felt like by the end of his time there, he had a lot of pressure on him to win anything.
Mhm.
When I don't think that should be the Wizards' priority because you can't win if you have nothing to build off of. And it
Right.
kind of felt like ownership might have been pressing him at the end, which I hope is not the case because that's misguided, to be
Right.
honest.
And then what are you doing for with this new guy? Like, what's your MO gonna be with him?
Yeah,
Like, are
because
you gonna trade him to
if you're
win?
just pressing this guy too, ownership's got to switch it up at some point. If you press the last guy and it didn't work out, and you're pressing this guy too, what are we doing? That's just bad management.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
No, totally.
Um, yeah. So with that, I think that covered all the basketball related news, some niche stuff, obviously, that we went into. But yeah, I thought that's kind of what we've got. All the main topics that have been going on since our last podcast.
That's all the content we have. So because of that, we had a relatively short episode today. And so some of the time we're going to use for our lovely listeners is to test Max. Max tested me on a playoff related quiz that really went after my medal. This one's not going to be quite as, I think, specific, but I'm curious to see how we do. So
I'm
Max,
scared.
here's the name of the game. There are 10, this is top 10. But if you get 11 through 15, we will count it as not a miss. So feel free to get whatever you want written down. And what we're going to do is, in order to avoid the whole, the thing with playoff statistics is you see a guy, oh, this guy averaged 38 points per game in the playoffs in the 20 blah 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 season. You're like, oh, that's impressive. And then you realize that it was a 6-game series and they lost in the first round. You're like, oh, okay. It's kind of tough to square that with somebody that averaged like 28 points per game, but then made it to the finals. So
Yeah.
what I'm going to have you do is guess the top 10, and I will count 11 through 15, the top 10 scorers in this year's postseason.
Oh, this year's postseason.
This year's postseason. We've been watching
So
plenty about
scores, or we're just saying points. So that's just points.
points. Not points per
Ooh.
game. Not points per game. I'll give you the points per game as you get these players, but not points per game.
Okay, so top 10 in points this play. Sorry, I'm writing this down just so
Sure.
okay. I feel like I'm gonna get 5 or 6 pretty quickly, and it's gonna slow down. We'll see. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, cool. So Nikola Jokic.
Yep, he's number 2.
Number
At
2.
and I'll give you, he's at just under 30 a game. 29.9. Friggin' wild.
Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy is 3rd at 28.8.
Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray, yes, sir. He is 4th at 27.7.
Jason Tatum.
Jason Tatum is number 1. You got the top 4. Tatum is at also 27.7.
This is tough because I want to say a guy in the Lakers. I want to say AD or LeBron, but I'm just kind of wondering. I think AD is on this list. I'm not gonna guess him just yet, but I'm pretty sure he's on this list. But LeBron, for example, I don't know how much LeBron averaged, and is LeBron only played 4 extra games than Steph Curry. I wonder what that difference is. AD though, I'll go with AD.
Yep, you got that one. AD is 9th. He averaged 22.6 a game.
That's 22.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's it. Alternate day. AD.
Oh, it's total points too, though, because they they beat the Grizzlies in 5, right? So I guess they had
6.
6. Okay, so but I guess they've had no 7-game series or anything like that.
Yeah,
Jalen
they
Brown.
2-6. Yeah, Jaylen Brown, that's good. You round up the top five. He's averaging 22.7 a game.
So if AD's so here's my thing. If AD is ninth with 22 a game, Steph Curry's on this list, I think. Steph.
Okay. That's your guess?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you got it. Steph is actually sixth,
Yeah.
which is crazy. He only played 13 games.
Yeah, but he had that extra game 7 in round 1. And then I knew he averaged like what, 30? What did you say?
Yeah, 30.5.
Yeah. So if AD was at 22, Steph had to be there. Okay. This is tough because Miami also didn't have long series. So Bam, I don't think is on this list. Hmm. Brooke Lopez? Uh no. Brooke Lopez. This is tough. This is not a guess. I kind of want to say Derek White, but I don't think he played. I don't think he averaged enough because he's played a lot of games. So I don't think he's averaged enough. Let's just go with LeBron.
Yes, LeBron is seventh on this list.
I cannot
Averaging,
believe LeBron average more.
yeah, 24 and a half points per game.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's crazy. Uh,
Man, you're doing
I have
well.
a, I have a, I have a sneaky prediction. I have a sneaky one coming up. I think I
Okay.
got a shot here.
You're
Jalen
you're missing.
Brunson.
So Jalen Brunson is not in the top 10. However, he doesn't count as an L because he's number 11
No way, bro.
at at 20,
No.
but scores a lot, 27.8. That was a great sneaky pick.
Dude, that's super pain. So I got the eighth and the ninth at the eighth and the tenth spot left.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Devin Booker.
Devin Booker is eighth at 33.7 points per game.
Come on, what am I doing? Because now I'm thinking of all the teams that got second rounded, but they probably had a guy who scored a ton. I feel like KD might be the 10th guy here, but I'm not gonna guess him just yet. Um, uh, Celtics. Oh, Philly. Who did Philly? But Philly got a sweep around 1. I think that definitely diminishes their odds of having a guy here. Did KD miss any of these games too? I don't think he did. KD.
Damn, boy. Nailed it.
Let's go.
Nailed it. Damn. 29 a game. Wow. That was fire, Max. You flew through that.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. Dang, I really wish Brunson was 10th, though. If Brunson was 10th and I'd sniped him like that, that would have been crazy. But
that would have been
what it is.
electric. So
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, Book and KD and Jalen Brunson all had 11 games.
Okay.
You were right not to pick any Sixer. Derek White would have been 16th. So he would have
Okay.
been just outside. So that was a good miss, but he was right outside the top 15. Bam was also a solid attempted a guess. He was 12th. And then
Okay,
11
Bam.
15.
Yeah.
He was close. Yeah, he was close. And then Austin Reeves actually 13th, then Smart, then Klay Thompson.
Wow. I would not have got so Reeves and Smart, had they been any higher, I would have had no chance there. Because I definitely would have guessed I would have guessed Harden, even though he had some like terrible games. I would have guessed him before them. I know Embiid missed a few games, so I was not gonna be picking Embiid, but
Yeah.
that's
Embiid
okay.
only played
Well,
yeah.
no, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's go, baby.
Well done. Damn.
Oh
Very well
man.
done.
I think because I started going back, I was like, because at some point I was like, there's no chance Michael Porter Jr. scored more than Jalen Brunson, even though he played extra games. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it is what it is. But,
Yeah.
that's another quiz completed here on the Spittin Hoops podcast. Also, our last few videos on YouTube did really well, so we appreciate all the love. If you guys want to drop a like or subscribe, we would appreciate it. If not, and you just want to keep clicking the video, just rack up the views. Like we're okay with that too. You don't have to click this subscribe button. You can also just keep clicking the refresh button. Like we're good with that.
Yeah.
Like
You can do that. Yeah. And subscribing is free. You know what I mean? Like it don't cost you nothing to subscribe.
Yeah. If you want to make some burner emails and subscribe across all of them, like, we wouldn't endorse it, but we wouldn't be against it.
Yeah, we won't shame you for it. I haven't done it myself 12 times yet, so
Yeah, I definitely don't have 18 Gmail accounts that are the reason we have 18 subscribers. Yeah, but yeah, for real, we appreciate the love. We'll probably keep doing like that sort of stuff with like the breakout videos and then actually having the full podcast on YouTube as well. Spotify as well. We see you too. You don't see us,
yes,
you'll
sir.
probably hear us, but yeah.
Hear us well. Listen to us in the car.
Yeah.
But for now, we'll reconvene sometime next week, if not Friday, to discuss the end of this series, however it goes. Max, any last words for this game we're about to watch tomorrow?
No, I want Jimmy Butler to do insane things. Hey, yo.
Yeah, me too. Insane means terrible decision making in the fourth quarter.
I'm gonna be honest, bro. I like no shame. I'm rooting for Miami so hard in all these games. Like I know I don't hate the Celtics at all, but it's just the storyline and Jimmy Butler is just too like I can't not root for that. And then also a potential Heat Nuggets series to me is just like way more spicy than a Celtics Nuggets series. As much as Celtics Nuggets would probably be better basketball.
Right. The matchups would be wild, and the storylines would be so wild for that. And so we definitely will be able to. We'll have plenty of content to talk about regardless of what happens here.
Yeah, definitely is. But yeah, I feel like another good episode in the books.
Yes, sir. So until then, we'll see y'all next time. We'll be spitting hoops.